I want to say a special welcome now to our video audience. Good to have you with us. My name is Sherwin. We have two services here at Laketon Bethel every Sunday, one at 9 and one at 11. We got plenty of room for you. Some of you have asked me how to support Laketon Bethel, and all you have to do is go to our webpage. It's just laketonbethel.org, and look it up, and you'll be directed to how you can do that there. So, a few weeks ago, about 2 weeks ago now, we were conducting a funeral here, and Steve Mussman was running the projection camera. I got talking with Steve about the purpose of the church, the purpose of following Jesus, a few other things like that. And, well, Steve taught me some things. I wanted him to share with all of us what he was talking about, because it's important. You know, we're talking today about endorphins for the soul. Yeah, come on up, Steve. And boy, I just got an earful from this guy that I thought you all needed to hear. So Steve was telling me that service has these byproducts, these endorphins for the soul. And endorphins are interesting things. These are hormones manufactured by the pituitary gland. I have no idea where the pituitary gland is, but it makes you feel good when they're released. I don't understand them, but the nurse practitioner that I see said there's something like opiates, or one of the nurse practitioners I talked to about this, and they give you a sense of well-being, kind of like taking Vicodin or Norco or something like that. And, you know, the difference is they're natural. So they create this thing of this feeling of well-being. You get it when you exercise, and you can even get it from eating. So I get lots of endorphins. And those are the kind of activities that release these things into our bodies. Just like when you serve, endorphins are released in your soul. And I don't understand how that happens, so Steve, you can tell us.
Okay. Well, Sherman's exactly right. You do get a high, a really big high, when you volunteer and serve. I chose back in 2013 to volunteer for some of the more non-traditional places where you think of volunteering versus, you know, in your community and in your church. So let me explain a couple of those to you, and you can kind of go along the ride with me. So the first one I got involved with was what they call One Day with God camps. That was back in 2013. The program's been around since 2010 in the state of Michigan. But essentially, if you're a child and have a parent in prison, you are going to have about a 70 to 80% chance of ending up in prison yourself. So this group is trying to break that cycle. And what we do is on Fridays, we go in to whether it's a man's prison or female, woman's prison, and we teach the moms and dads how to be good moms and dads from prison, that you can still do that. And it's a biblically based program that we put together and show them on Friday that carries over into Saturday, where we bring their children in, and they get to spend a whole day with their children. And it's amazing the relationships, the bonds that are created through this day, this One Day with God camp. And these tools not only apply to Saturday, but they apply once the children leave and head back home. Dads can still communicate with them on the booklets that are giving. They can share things on the phone. It's an amazing program, and the things I've seen along the way. I remember one specific one. There's so many, but one, we were finishing up the camp on Saturday, and we were bringing the kids back to the host church where their moms and caretakers can get them. And as we pulled up to the church, the one little boy ran off of the bus to his mom. He jumped in her arms and said, "Mommy, Mommy, Daddy really loves me. He does, he does." And it was incredible, you know, a blessing. Talk about a high from all the things I saw, you know, on that particular one. I think I cried most of the day, more tears. I think my sprinkler system was broken. But anyway, I cried, you know, so much because I saw so much that touched my heart. It was amazing. So I came off that camp and I was pumped. And so a friend of mine had put in an application and was accepted through New Directions out of Lansing, which is a prison-based ministry. And I thought, I'll send my application in too and see what happens. Well, sent it in, nothing happened, you know, month after month. So I thought, don't have to worry about that, you know, because suddenly, you know, I'm going in with 150 people on one of these One Day with God camps, volunteers. But now I have to go in by myself. So that fateful day in May came, about the middle of May, and I got a call from the director at New Directions. Said they found my application and was I interested in continuing to be a part of that. And I went, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Yep, we got an opportunity for you. That was even more scary. And so I said, I have to pray on it. That's the classic response, right? I'm going to pray on it. And he gave me a couple weeks. And I fretted over it. I was afraid, honestly, to go in by myself. But there was one night I put it on God. I said, before I went to bed, I prayed and I said, God, give me a signal, some type of sign that you want me to do this ministry, because right now I'm just not feeling it. The next morning at 9 o'clock, the director from New Directions called me up and asked me for a decision. I told him my story, we both laughed, and the next thing I know, I'm heading into a prison in August, 3 months later. And it was a Bible study. I had a praise band up front for about the first half hour, and then I led a Bible study after that. But the unique thing about that was that I got to experience something very special with these men that I had never even thought of before. And suddenly, going from 150 people there that I go in with down to myself, and suddenly 25 to 50 men I'm dealing with. It was quite humbling, I remember one particular Bible study where I always greeted the men when they came in. And by the way, this is in a Muskegon prison, West Shoreline, which is closed now. But I was giving the message there, doing a Bible study every second Saturday. So I go in, and this particular one, I was greeting the guys when they come in. And suddenly, this guy pops up and he goes, I really don't want to be here. Okay, I'm comfortable with that. He said, but I'm going to stay anyway, but, not even sure why, but just expect me to get up and leave, somewhere to do it, so don't be surprised. Okay, so we started with the praise band, and then we went into the Bible study, and he was still there. We got a little bit into the Bible study, and he started participating, and he participated all through it. He never left, and at the end, he came up to me and said, thank you, for having this, that I needed this today more than you can ever imagine. Another high. It was great. The Adopt a Reader program up in Whitehall. We were going in there one day a week, 30 minutes for each kid. These kids have struggles reading, and so we're there to help mentor, through that process. And of course, my first stint, I got Chase. Chase didn't want to read. Chase didn't want to do anything except bounce around. And I'm looking around, and all these other mentors, their kids are perfect little readers. And why do I have Chase? Why am I going through this struggle? And I went up and talked to the director up there that headed up the Adopt a Reader program. I'm saying, I don't know what to do. He's bouncing from this table, that table, and this table. And she said, he really doesn't need to read. He doesn't have a father. What he needs is for you to sit there and talk with him. If you get any reading done with it, that'll be great. But he just needs somebody to talk to. And God had put me in that position to give me that boy so that I could mentor him through the 2 years that I had him. God is so good. It was amazing. I also had signed up for another prison ministry that you go in and do the message. I had that on the third Sunday of each month, and I was, instead of West Shoreline, I was at Muskegon Correctional Facility. And that was interesting because now I graduated from 25 to 50 guys at a service to 150 to 200 in an auditorium. That was a bit humbling and overwhelming at times. But very special things happened there too. Third Sunday of the month, that just happened to fall on Easter, one of the years I was doing that. And there it was, I was there on Easter Sunday giving the message to 150, 200 men talking about Jesus, his death and resurrection. Oh my gosh, Steve Mussman, a layman in the church, getting to give that message to those men. I could go on and on. Kids Food Basket, we have tons of fun with that. As you know, with Hand to Hand, we're providing kids with meals on the weekends that wouldn't ordinarily have it. During the days, the schools provide them Monday through Friday for breakfast and lunch. Kids Food Basket provides them for the dinners. They call them sack suppers. And we provide, when I started there, it was 900 a week. Now we're up to over 1,700, and the beauty of that is that we continue to grow. We're only servicing 7 schools right now, and there's 11 on the waiting list. And I think about my time there, the fellowship I have at the Kids Food Basket, and one of the guys there, he's a Michigan fan, and the facilitator is Michigan State. Kind of an interesting contrast when they interact. But the totes we put the sack suppers in are basically 3 different colors: green, blue, and gray. And you bet that Jerry, the Michigan fan, only fills crates or totes that are green for Michigan State, just so he gets that feel, of the Michigan State love. That's the kind of interactions we have, and the fun. You just continue to grow, and your heart just continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I always relate to the Grinch that stole Christmas. When I started volunteering, how tiny they show the Grinch's heart is, but by the time he understands what Christmas is about, his heart is 3 times the size it was. Well, I can guarantee you, my heart continues to go through all the volunteering I do, and it's much more than just 3 times. It's 7, 10, 20. I continue to grow in my love for God, for Jesus. I pray more. I read my Bible more. It's amazing what this volunteering has done for me.
Well, that's excellent, Steve. And, the whole prison thing is quite intriguing to me, because I've visited people several times, and every time that door closes behind me, I think, this is kind of scary. I'm just grateful that I don't have to stay. And so I'm glad you're doing that. And the spiritual endorphins that course through you is
it's amazing,
unmatchable. Yeah. The Bible does talk about this. We're going to take a look at that in a minute from the letter of James. He says this: "What good is it, dear brothers and sisters, if you say you have faith but don't show it by your actions? Can that kind of faith save anyone?" Now, just to be clear, actions don't save you. Jesus does. Okay, you're saved by trusting Jesus to save you. But if your faith is real, if you really trust Jesus to save you, actions result. They're like a reflex of gratitude that comes from Him. Faith absolutely changes you. You become, as time goes on, more and more like Jesus. As we talked about last week, you become His representative in every way, from your own home to all of your interactions in life. So James goes on with this, and he says this: "Suppose you see a brother or sister who has no food or clothing, and you say, 'Goodbye and have a good day. Stay warm and eat well.' But then you don't give that person any food or clothing. What good does that do?" Well, it's kind of like we hear so much about, I'm sending prayers and thoughts. Yeah, and that's great. That's important, but it's not enough. You have to be the answer to your own prayers. That's what's important. See, a generous heart accompanies faith all the time. Jesus told us to love God and to love our neighbors. Well, you love your neighbors by feeding hungry kids, by representing Jesus to them in a non-obnoxious way. James goes on with this. He says, "So you see, faith by itself isn't enough. Unless it produces good deeds, it's dead and useless." Spiritual growth, and Steve, I know you agree with this, it only happens through service.
Absolutely.
It doesn't come any other way. I mentioned last week that when I hear at least once a year, I'm just not being fed at your church. And like I said last week, when I was a young pastor, that kept me up at night. But I'm old now, and I realize that, I'm just not getting fed is code for I'm just not getting enough attention. And so now I can handle it. But now when somebody says that, I say, well, what are you doing to serve? And they usually look at me and say, well, nothing. They say, well, that might be your problem right there. Dig in, get something done. Everyone can do something. When I was involved with Willow Creek in Chicago years ago, I attended several training events there, and they were all good. One was about church finance. And they were talking about how there were people in Chicago, they call them loopsters, who were financial guys that had made vast fortunes on the Chicago Board of Trade. That's where they worked. And they lived out in the western suburbs in Barrington, places like that. But what they would do is they kept working. Even though they had enough money to buy an island somewhere, they just kept working all the time. They kept doing that loop, the Chicago loop, hence loopsters. And the reason they did that was so they could support the church. There was a group of them there that gave $100,000 minimum a year just to Willow Creek. And I thought, well, I got to find some of those for Muskegon here, for Laketon Bethel. But they did that because they wanted to serve. And I thought that was kind of cool. There they were doing their thing and the Chicago Board of Trade, so they could support the church. And then the other thing is, I'd met a few of these guys because I wanted to get to know them, find out what really made them tick. It's the same thing as you. Are you a multimillionaire too?
Not since I recently looked at my bank statements.
Okay.
No.
But they said the same thing. The endorphins, the spiritual endorphins that they got from this was so overwhelming. So I'm exiting the church. I was going to go to the whatever motel I was staying in that day. As I was walking out to my car, I saw one of those loopsters with one of those stabby things that you pick garbage up with. And I'd met him, so I went and talked to him. I said, what are you doing? He goes, well, I had some extra time, so I thought I'd just get some of this litter off of this parking lot. And I thought to myself, you know, that's the first time I've seen a multimillionaire cleaning a parking lot. But it was a good thing, and he did it for the same reason that he gave all that money. He wanted to serve, and of course he experienced the rewards for it. James goes on with this. Just as the body is dead without breath, so faith is dead without good works. John Calvin, whom we all know, said that faith that doesn't serve is just a rotting corpse. The opposite of that is true too. Faith that serves is vital and growing. Now, last week we talked about hand to hand and our involvement with that. It was an interesting thing. It's started by a gal who went to school on a Monday when the school was closed due to a snowstorm and found some kids there wanting to get in because they were hungry and they were depending on the schools to feed them. They hadn't eaten all weekend. And so she started this program of giving food to kids on weekends, kids that didn't have the means to have those. And they've expanded that to several schools. We've been taking care of Central Elementary. About 50 kids in Central Elementary have been served by Laketon Bethel people. Now we're expanding that for the fall. We're taking on Reese Puffer Elementary and Twin Lake Elementary along with this. The cost is going to be $5,000 to $7,000 out of our budget. We're going to need to have people bring in food, and we're going to have to deliver it to the schools on Thursday nights. It's all got to be done by volunteers, and everyone can participate. You can give money to it, you can give food, you can give time, and the cool thing about it is there are absolutely no rewards except for the spiritual endorphins that you will get for doing it. Steve, you had some other opportunities you wanted to tell us about. Why don't you do that?
I did. So you're wondering, what can I volunteer for? Well, I just happen to have a list here. So anyway, when we looked at just outside of Laketon Bethel, some things that I have just put down, and this is by no means a full list, but at our local schools, you know, from September through May, you can mentor a child. For me, it was an Adopt a Reader program. For Sherwin, it was in math. The Men's Rescue Mission, United Way, Kids Food Basket, Forgiven Ministry, Love Inc., Retirement Communities, Big Brother, Big Sisters. Forgiven Ministry, there's the website to go on. They held a camp down here in Muskegon Correctional Facility back in 2016, I think it was. But if you go on there and look at some of the videos they have, they'll show Juju Chang will show you exactly what a one-day camp is like at a Muskegon facility here. Great program. Kids Food Basket, you know, you've already heard about that. Over 1,700 sacked suppers we're delivering now, and that's only 7 schools. We need 11. We want to get those other 11 on, and we need funding for it. Inside Laketon Bethel, gosh, we need greeters. Haven't been seeing greeters out there for a while. Coffee servers, sound video system. We're in desperate need back there of people to help. And if I can do it, anybody can do it. Children's programs, join the choir, praise band, help with the food truck, senior connections, the hand-to-hand. We're expanding that. I think my wife said we're going to need at least 50 people for that. Join or start a small group. And then the other opportunities, just in your daily lives. Mentor a non-believer. Say hello to someone you don't know. Hold a door open. Pay it forward. Invite someone to church. The giving portion of this, we talk about the money. I think we're going to need more money than $5,000 to $7,000 for the hand-to-hand. Prices are going up. It's getting harder to get your hands on those types of things. So, if you can give. Food donations. We'll have a list out for that. Your time. I look at that. All the things I just told you about that I'm involved in, I did before I retired. So I know there's time out there. And the way I resolved that in my mind was that, do I want to serve the world, or do I want to serve God? And I decided God was going to be my priority. And the reason I retired in 2019 was so I could serve our Lord more and more. When He asked, when it's up here, it's time to rock and roll.
Well, and like we talked about too, Steve, is that the more time you give away, the more time you have.
Absolutely.
It's just funny how that works.
Don't even notice.
So last several months I've been talking about church revitalization. Obviously COVID's pretty much cut us in half, and I thought, how can we fix this situation? It's going on all across the country. What are we going to do about it? I talked to some consultants and got some proposals from consultants, had some consultants come to the board meetings, to the consistory meetings. And boy, they gave us a whole lot of programs that we could choose from, all which cost money. And they want to take us on a retreat. And I thought, oh boy, I tell you what, I want to go, I like everybody on that consistory, but going on a 3-day retreat with them, I started thinking of that as the same way I would think of a colonoscopy preparation. I just didn't want to do it. So I got to thinking about that. I said, well, why don't we just do what Jesus has called us to do, which is contained in Colossians 3:17. We are called to be His representatives here. Now, I studied church revitalization 25 years ago in depth, and one of the main questions that we were taught to ask churches is, who would miss your church if it closed? And if the answer to that is only the people who attend the church, your church is dying. It's not going anywhere. But if the community misses it, you have a thriving church. COVID has devastated churches all across the country. Driving back from South Carolina, I couldn't believe how many churches I saw that were permanently closed. But COVID did not change what we're called to do. And we're called to be Jesus' representatives in this community. So let's be the church that makes a difference in the community. Now, for those of you who are watching online and for those of you who are here this morning, there's a lot more on our website about this, and there will be continued to be more on that. You can find the information there or contact me directly. And as always, thanks for listening.